Hello, my name is Linda Shloss, and I teach social studies here at Menlo-Atherton. I teach 9th grade world studies and life skills, and I also teach 10th grade modern European history. A subject I am very passionate about right now is the refugee crisis. As a history teacher, I feel like it is my job, and this is what I say, it's my job to help students learn about the past, to understand our present, so they can make informed decisions for our future. One of the things I do teach also is the rise of Nazism and fascism and the refugee crisis with the Jews. And right now, I am very afraid seeing all this Islamophobia. And I am also concerned that we are having this huge refugee crisis. And I think the scale of the refugee crisis is not as understood. It is not just people from Syria, though what is happening in Syria is awful. There are people from all over. So, for example, there's an extreme drought in Sudan. There are people from northeastern Africa who are also trying to escape. And the response I see by a lot of people and world leaders scare me. And the reason why is, once again, I can't help myself. I'm a history teacher. I look to the past. So for example, a lot of my students ask me when we learn about the Holocaust, I like to give the date of the start is 1933, when the Nazi Party took over and the Reichstag fire happened, and we get the end of the Weimar Republic. Because that's when we start to see anti-Semitic reforms happen. And then, so students say, if the war doesn't start till 1939, why did people not just leave? Why didn't they just get out? And that complex issue of why do they not just leave if it's so dangerous, just in my mind means we need to learn more. We need to dive in. That's such a good question. Let's figure out what is happening. So the first issue of maybe they don't want to leave the home they've been in for years with their family, their friends, everything that they know. And a lot of people don't realize how bad it's gonna get until it's too late. But also when it gets as bad as it is, where you feel it is worth leaving your home, your businesses, your family, separating your family for just the hope that they can survive and have somewhere else to go. When you get to that point, sometimes it's either too late or it is not as easy as it sounds. And when people started to leave in masses, when Jews were trying to get out and leave, there became a refugee crisis. And in 1938, 32 countries hosted by, with the idea and the invitation came from our president, Franklin D. Roosevelt, to have this Avion conference. 32 nations came together to try to figure out what do we do with these Jewish refugees. And they came together, and one by one, representatives stood up and said how they sympathized with this situation, but there's just nothing they can do. Only one country offered to take people on a permanent basis, and that was, surprisingly, because a lot of students don't realize this, the Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic offered to take 100,000 Jews. Holland and Denmark offered to take some as well, but only in a temporary, for a temporary amount of time, right? And so when Jews tried to get out, there was nowhere to go. And I think recently what's become famous is the story of the ship, the St. Louis, where about 900 Jews boarded a ship to escape from Nazi Europe. They made it all the way to Havana, Cuba, where they thought they would be given asylum. And then what ends up happening is they're not allowed in. And they appealed to all these different countries in the Western Hemisphere. And they're told they can't come in. And what happens is the ship is turned around and sent back to Nazi Europe, and Nazi-controlled Europe. And so this issue of where do you go? And I see that happening right now. I see these refugees. I see the atrocities happening to the Syrian people. To give some context, it was just, I think, 2 days ago that there was another gas attack on the Syrian people, where a third of those who were killed were children. And people, they say, why don't they leave? And then there's the question, where do they go? And I worry that the humanity aspect of the plight of refugees has been lost by many. And to think of these people as mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, children, family who are so desperate they're willing to put everything on the line and leave. And so one thing I am really passionate about is trying to figure out how can we help when this situation arises, not to turn our head. And that kind of brings me to a second issue that I feel is connected with what we saw in the 1930s and 40s. But in this case, instead of anti-Semitism, it's Islamophobia, the fear of, or hatred even, of Islam and the Muslim people. And hearing people talking about refugees as terrorists scare me, because these are the people who are also being attacked by the same terrorists that those people saying no to them coming in are afraid of. And so the lack of seeing refugees as human and the lack of understanding the crisis scare me. I hope that when our students are the leaders voting and making decision and out there on the streets marching or whatever they want to do to get their voice across, they remember that we're human and that we should be treated as such and learn from the past.